Morning, everybody. We're letting people file in from the waiting room. Can one of the Zoom controllers let me know when they think everybody's here?
Looks like folks are all joined in.
Looks like everybody's here. Fantastic. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Yantos. I work at Stantec and have been part of the WaterTalks program for the last couple of years. And we're here today. I'll be your facilitator and giving a bunch of this presentation about SB 552, an overview for the small systems in the Upper Santa Clara River watershed area. Can we go on to the next slide? So today's agenda, we're going to do a quick welcome and an icebreaker, and we're going to set the stage, talk a little bit about the small system partnerships that has been an element of WaterTalks for the last year or so. We'll give an overview of SB 552 with a focus on small water suppliers. And then we'll have a bit of a round robin with the various agencies that are with us today that have some role to play in drought planning and support for small water systems. And we'll end the session with a Q&A for the participants who may find themselves with questions about 552 or questions for any of the state or regional agencies that are participating today. So I've kind of handled the welcome already. And as an icebreaker, I'm hoping everyone can get their chat open and maybe just share what color are your favorite socks? Which I know is weird and has nothing to do with water, but it's a good way to get people rolling and feeling happy to be here. I would say you don't wear socks. That's even better, Chris. My favorite socks are given to me by my son a long time ago, and it has some otters on them. And I've always been a big fan of otters because they are fierce and they work together in teams. And they're also a pretty good apex predator for a lot of our watersheds and our ocean. So my favorite socks are otters. They're light blue, I suppose, is the sock, but the otter pictures are brown, of course. Okay, well, thanks everyone for a goofy icebreaker, which is always fun. Somebody's rolling their eyes at me. Your favorite socks are gray, Lee? Yeah, I mean, you're rolling eyes at yourself, I would imagine. Thanks, Rita. Thanks, everybody. It's good to see you all here today. Maybe we can go on to the next slide, and I'll turn it over to Peter Massey at Tree People.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
I think so, Peter. Go ahead.
I'm Peter Massey. I'm project manager for water equity programs with Tree People. And today's workshop is funded through the 2014 California Proposition 1 Water Bond and a statewide effort called the Disadvantaged Community and Tribal Involvement Program. The program is managed statewide by California Department of Water Resources and locally by LA County Flood Control District through the Integrated Regional Water Management Program. Now, locally, we call this program WaterTalks. Tree People serves as lead consultant to deliver WaterTalks in the greater LA County and Upper Santa Clara River regions. Stantec is a part of our consulting team and helping us out tremendously here today. WaterTalks is also very active in Ventura County, and we welcome our friends from across the county line this morning. WaterTalks includes three major components. Number one is community engagement and education. Number two is a thorough needs assessment of more than 100 communities across LA and Ventura County. That was carried out in 2021 and 22. And then the third component is project development, which is currently providing technical assistance to 17 projects and programs across greater LA and Upper Santa Clara River regions. So that brings us to today's event. Through the 2021-22 needs assessment, community members in the region expressed concerns very often about drinking water quality and water supply reliability. And there are several small water systems working very diligently to provide safe, reliable drinking water to unincorporated communities such as Acton, Agua Dulce, Castaic, and several others. Reflecting on this situation, WaterTalks began exploring opportunities to bring representatives of these small water systems together for networking, mutual support, and potential partnerships. An outreach list was researched and refined, and that includes close to 40 systems in the upper Santa Clara River area. Initial outreach brought together a few representatives for an initial meeting in March of 2023. And one highlight from the meeting was the common need among systems to understand the impacts of Senate Bill 552. So since then, we've been developing today's event and want to thank Department of Water Resources for their help and guidance, along with the State Water Resources Control Board and LA County. If you're interested in more information about WaterTalks, please visit www.watertalks.la. Thanks, everybody. Welcome again. Turn it over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Peter. That's a great overview of WaterTalks, and that can take us on to the next slide. So we're here to talk about Senate Bill 552, which is about drought planning for small water suppliers. The gray slides that you'll be seeing that I'll be presenting over the next couple of minutes are courtesy of Department of Water Resources from Julia Ekstrom, who actually is here on the call with us. So there's a level of questions that I can answer, and after that level of questions, there'll be some that maybe Julia can reach in, can speak up to. So as I said earlier, I'm a principal here at Stantec, and this is to follow on the work of WaterTalks to talk about the small systems. Can we get the next slide? So the legislature during the previous drought really noticed that across the state, many small water systems were struggling with dry wells. We're finding that contaminants that were either naturally occurring or as a result of pollution becoming more concentrated as the water levels dropped. They were also facing many cost shocks related to water, in that the available water perhaps was less than it was used to being, but the price of water was increasing, or the monthly bill wasn't changing. People paying for water that they couldn't use. Many turned to bottled water and potable water deliveries by vehicle, and that the challenges of droughts were really catching a bunch of people by surprise, and that most didn't know where to turn for help or how to prepare themselves for the next one. Next slide. So SB 552 really came from earlier measures that were passed. The AB 1668 was passed in the earlier drought, and that effort led to DWR hosting a process that focused on how small water providers and rural communities can be prepared for droughts. And advisory group was formed and supported the department in developing a vulnerability tool, a way of understanding which systems are most vulnerable to droughts, and then much of recommendations on how to support those systems with contingency plans and mutual aid. So the recommendations out of that advisory group, that statewide advisory group, informed the 552 that passed and what was called for in it. Next slide. So there are two main state agencies that are responsible for the 552 elements: the Department of Water Resources, which is here with us today, and they're part of the California Natural Resources Agency. They created a contingency plan template, for a water shortage contingency plan template for use by small systems. They created the water shortage vulnerability tool that was mentioned earlier, and they're now working on developing partnerships and strategies for interagency drought and water shortage task forces up and down the state. And it's called the DRIP Collaborative, which I guess is a good name. The Drought Resiliency Interagency and Partners Collaborative, the DRIP Collaborative. And the State Water Resources Control Board also has a role to play, and they're in the California Environmental Protection Agency. They also are working on a water shortage contingency plan template, perhaps the same one. They have technical assistance opportunities where they can provide support for systems that have fewer than 1,000 connections. They can provide, they require water supply and program reporting. And then they also are providing technical assistance to counties who are helping small systems and domestic wells respond to drought. Next slide. So the purpose behind 552 is creating a series of requirements that serve as a foundation for making sure that the small water systems of California are resilient to droughts in the future. And it includes supporting the preparation for future droughts, and then also helping understand how different water systems confront different challenges depending upon where they are in the state. Small water systems are really scattered all over California, from the coast to the mountains, from the southern valleys to the northern forests. They're really everywhere. So the nature of drought and the challenges that different water systems face is going to be very specific to their local geography. And then also an opportunity for the state to participate in providing guidance and technical assistance and support for the systems. It's really focused on a disaster risk management framework. And usually in the past, drought hasn't been one of the disasters we prepare for. But in 552, it really takes us to that path where we want to think about drought as a disaster. So ways to mitigate its impact when it happens, to be prepared for it by forecasting and monitoring whether drought is upon us, what to do during a drought, and then how to come back when the drought is ending to a healthy place again. Next slide. So there are requirements in 552 for 3 different groups of managers, and the blue arrow is pointing to the ones that we're primarily focused on today, which is the small water suppliers. The counties also face a series of requirements in 552, and then the state as well has responsibilities legislated by that law. And so to focus on the small water suppliers, this is situations where we have from 1,000 to 3,000 connections, or schools that are their own water supplier. They have requirements to produce a water shortage contingency plan. If you have 15 to 999 connections in your water system, you have assessment, you have drought assessment or elements that need to be added to an emergency response or an emergency notification plan. And then all small suppliers now have supply and demand reporting requirements, and all small suppliers have drought resiliency standards, infrastructure upgrades. We're going to talk through all of these elements as the slides continue. For the county, and some of the county folks that are with us on the line today are starting to get geared up to carry out these activities. Each county needs to create a drought and water shortage task force that supports state smalls, so that's the smaller connections and domestic wells, and then has to develop a water shortage plan and an assessment for the state smalls and domestic wells within their county. And then, as we said earlier, the state is developing tools, resources, and a standing interagency task force. If at any point during this you have questions, please drop them in the chat so that we don't lose them along the way. But there will be opportunities to do a Q&A in a few minutes here. So we have a Zoom poll that's about to pop up, and we're curious, for those of you that are on the call that are from water systems, how many service connections do you serve water to? Can we launch that poll? Atlee, I'll look to you to see, or Rihanna, when we think everybody's answered.
I think we've got all of our respondents.
Okay. I bet a whole bunch of NA. But let's see it. Can you launch the results? There we go. Okay, so we have folks from some bigger systems, over 3,000. We have about the same number of folks from the 15 to 999. And then some smalls and domestic wells. This is interesting because the 1,000 to 299, the 1,000 to 3,000, that 0% there is what we're chiefly talking about today. So this is going to be a useful opportunity for those of you that have colleagues or friends that are in those systems, or if those systems reach out to you, hopefully the information you learned today will be able to help you as you talk with them. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So, another Zoom poll. You haven't gotten much from us yet, but I'm curious if you already better understand which requirements apply to the water system that you work for.
We have a steady stream of responses. It is slowing down. Give it just a moment. All right, I think we've got everyone.
Okay, I bet it's all, I'm getting there. Right on. That means we've already got some good yeses. Glad to hear it. And the no, I hope you hang with us because we'll be able to give you some more information as we go. Thanks, everybody. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, so this is a summary of what I was just talking about a little bit. And we'll spend some time looking at this table now, and it will come back around as we go down the slides further. And you can see the requirements are down here on the left with the 5 tasks. So there's the drought resiliency measures, there's the abridged water shortage contingency plan, drought elements added to the emergency notification or response plan, annual reporting of water supply condition to State Board, and annual water demand reporting to State Board. So those are the tasks that are associated with 552. And depending upon what size system you're part of, you either are required to complete those tasks or not. And of course, as we said, we're really thinking about the 1,000 to 299 and then the 15 to 999 today. So you can see that on the 15 to 999, all of these tasks are now responsible for you, something you're responsible for, except for the abridged water shortage contingency plan. And like I said, we'll go through each of these tasks here one at a time, and you'll see this again as we talk about them. But first, I will go through the task 1, drought resiliency measures that are part of 552. So you can see here that all small water suppliers are required to do these. And the clause in the law that passed, it says you need to implement these drought resiliency measures subject to funding availability. Now, we have been hopeful that some of our colleagues on the line here today, and maybe I'm going to call on the State Board lead who's with us to share a little bit about your thinking around what that subject to funding availability means for the small water systems that are on the line with us today.
Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Joseph Guzman. I'm with the State Water Resources Control Board, the Division of Drinking Water. I work in the County Engagement Unit, and just to introduce myself a little bit, I typically work with counties that regulate smaller drinking water systems, and also will be helping counties to implement SB 552 requirements, especially as they relate to state small water systems and domestic well owners. And so this is a question that I've been getting a lot from a lot of our regulators, and it's something that we still need to discuss a little bit further. I think it's going to be kind of a tougher conversation to identify exactly what that funding availability is, but I know that there are funding pots available for assistance with meeting SB 552 requirements, and I think we might have linked and talked about it a little bit earlier about that technical assistance that's available to water systems that are under 1,000 service connections.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. That's a good update. And I had a feeling that was still the case, is that the actual nature of that subject to funding availability clause is a thing that's still being worked out at the state level. But there is opportunities for people to receive technical assistance and perhaps other support that we will talk about a little bit deeper into the presentation. So the drought resiliency measures that you see on the screen here are the ones that are called out by the law. And the A through F are the things that need to be done. And you can see there are dates associated with each of them. So by January of this year, so in the past, all small water suppliers should have a mechanism for detecting groundwater levels in your production wells. Also by this January behind us, all small water suppliers were supposed to be members of a mutual aid organization. By the January 1 of 24 coming up in front of us, there's a need to have continuous operations during power failure. So if you don't have power from the grid, that you have another way to operate your equipment. By January of 2027, so that's a ways out now, every small water system needs to have a backup source of water supply or an intertie to another water system. By January of 2032, so maybe way out, but that'll come up on us faster than any of us imagined, right? Is that every service connection needs to have a meter, and there has to be a mechanism for you monitoring water loss from your system. Also, by that January of 32, every small water supplier will need to be able to meet minimum fire flow requirements for the community that you serve. So these are the drought resiliency measures that are the responsibility of all of those small water suppliers, from 15 to 3,000. I should say 2,999. It's just so long to say that I'm going to skip to 3,000. So when we look at these, we sort of have one of these to focus on. Each of these steps is to set up a monitoring system sufficient to detect that production well groundwater levels. So I think in most cases, this is a relatively standard process that all systems have. I'm curious if there's anybody on the line who works for a small system that is not currently capable of monitoring groundwater levels in your well. And don't be ashamed to let us know, because that just means you're someone who could benefit from technical assistance and support. Does anybody want to raise a hand if you're in that situation and share with us? Okay, that either means everybody's great, or someone who isn't is going to want to reach out separately to talk to some folks about getting that help. The next one. So joining a mutual aid organization is one of the other requirements. California WARN is the one that is talked about by many, and it's an organization that many agencies belong to. It's not the only one. So the idea of mutual aid is that it's an organization that allows the members to support one another when one or several of them are experiencing a crisis. So it's an opportunity to share resources such as equipment, generators, supplies, and even personnel among the organizations that are members of the Mutual Aid Association. There are instructions linked from this slide on easy steps to register. Membership in CalWARN is free, and it currently has over 600 member agencies. It is not the only mutual aid organization in town. Some counties have their own system established, but every small water supplier, this is a relatively easy step to take, and one of the ways that you can express progress towards your 552 requirements. And again, CalWARN's membership is free. Others, I don't know about the details of all the others and whether there is one. I'm curious if anybody from LA County that's on the line knows if LA County has their own mutual aid organization. Lee Alexanderson, is that something you're familiar with?
It's not. I'm not sure if we have one. Are you talking about internal to the county?
Yeah, I think San Diego County runs their own mutual aid organization to benefit the systems there, but I think it's San Diego that I heard about doing one. I wasn't sure if LA County had something like that or was planning on something like that.
Well, I know the right guy to text, so maybe I'll
Okay,
have an update in a little bit.
fantastic. Thanks, Lee. Can we go to the next slide? So the next one of the drought resiliency measures is ensuring that continuous operations during power failures. So having backup, adequate backup electrical supply. This is something that's due in the current, the next January. So what is that, 3 months from now? State Board is currently offering financial assistance to qualifying water suppliers to get a backup generator. So the backup generator funding program is currently open. It is linked from this slide. And these slides will be made available and the links are being dropped in the chat for those interested. So there's currently a targeted program of supporting small water suppliers meeting this drought resiliency measure. And if anyone has questions about that, save them. We'll do Q&A, and we have the state board folks here to help out with it. Next slide. So this one is due a little further out, although 3+ years away is not that far, is that every small water supplier needs to have at least one backup source of water supply or a water system intertie that meets water quality requirements and can meet your average daily demand. So if you're a system that is reliant upon one well, this is the drought resiliency measure that I imagine you need to begin focusing on right away. And interties is one way to solve it, but also backup water supply, a backup water well is another way to do it. This one again is due in 3 years, and this is another site at which technical assistance may be able to support a small system who wants to pursue this strategy without, and that feels like it might need help doing so. And then we're into the much further out dates. This is 9 years away now, or 10 years when the whole thing passed. One is that every service connection needs to have a separate meter, and the system needs to way to monitor water loss due to leakage. So this is a requirement that's out a ways. But again, 9 years out is probably the right time to start working on this one. And again, technical assistance may be in a position to support this process. Next. And then the fire flow requirement is the other one that's due out in 2032. So there is a water code section reference, and the International Fire Code is referenced in the amount of what fire flow is. So it will have a certain number of gallons per minute for a certain amount of time, and it is somewhat dependent on the building stock and your geography. So getting in there and checking out these two elements of what fire flow requirements are for your community is going to specify how you would approach this work. Okay, next slide. I see a bunch of things in the chat going by, so I'm hoping one of my teammates is going to tell me if I should stop and handle any of it.
You're good, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Allie. Oh yeah, we have a third Zoom poll. So we have these 6 drought resiliency measures we just talked about, and we're hoping that the water systems here can let us know if you've done any of these or not yet, or all of them.
The results are still coming in. We're at 41% of responses.
That may be a product of all of our not water system participants.
Yes. It looks like we're stuck here at 45 now, so end
All
the
right, let's
poll
see
in
them.
10 seconds.
Okay. So it looks like we've got somebody who's done them all. Congratulations. That's fantastic. And we've got a bunch of folks who haven't started yet, and that's okay too. And we're glad that today's information might be able to help you getting on your way. And those of you that have already started, that's great news too. So it looks like there's room for improvement, but a lot of people are getting rolling, and I think we can help each other moving forward. Okay, what do you got for next slide? I think another poll.
This is a question to put in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is not a chat. This is not a poll. This is a chat question. So those of you that have started or have finished, what best practices, what did you do that you would want to share with others that might help them on their way? So this is something to just drop in the chat. What resources or best practices did you use to implement the drought resiliency measures that you just shared in the previous poll, so that others who haven't started yet might be able to learn from your experience? We'll give people a minute to jot some things down in the chat. Come on, all you folks that were successfully starting your work. Who joined a mutual aid organization other than Cal Warren? Does anybody have an example? Oh, thanks, Chris. Seems like your system's doing some good work. That's great. An example of a Cal Warren member. That's great. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Chris. Does anybody else have anything to contribute in the chat? Okay. We can move on from there. So coming back to this graphic, we had talked about the drought resiliency measures. Now we're going to talk about the abridged water shortage contingency plan. Now, of course, it's a no in the 15 to 999 community water system connection category, but it is relevant to the others. So we're just going to talk about it very briefly on the next slide. So the target date for this is July 1, 2023, so a couple months behind us. And the abridged water shortage contingency plan elements need to be managed about who to notify and who covers which items. So the drought planning contacts. So every water system needs to have a contact. It has to have some local public safety partners and vendors who can support them in water shortage contingency. The also in the contingency plan are questions of what to do and when. So triggering mechanisms for when you would carry out your contingency plan. So you would set standard water shortage levels, and then water shortage mitigation, response, customer communications, and others. So this is a plan elements that require you to notify your partners in your community, and then having mechanisms to know when to carry out different stages of your contingency plan. And again, this is not applicable if you're under 1,000 connections. Next slide. And so heading our way down the table, we're going to go to the next one, which is the drought element added to the emergency notification or the response plan. Now, this one does not apply to the 1,000 to 3,000 connections, but it does apply to the 15 to 999. Next slide. So for the suppliers with 15 to 999 connections, you need to have drought planning elements included in your emergency notification or response plans. So you have to have drought planning contacts, who you will reach out to and engage as drought is coming, and then standard water shortage levels. So when you would trigger your plan. The plan must describe the public notification process. So when your primary drinking water standards are not complied with because of drought, what monitoring requirements are going to not be performed because of drought, and conditions where any variance or exemption are not being complied with based on your permitting. So this is an opportunity for when drought is impacting you, that you have to have plans for what to do, when you will trigger your drought planning, and what you need to notify the impacts of the drought are having on your water supply. So for water systems that are serving over 3,300 people, you have to include findings of the risk assessment. So you need to have a risk assessment of what the impact of drought will be on your community if you have more than 3,300 people. And this is a spot where technical assistance is available from State Water Board to support. And this on the screen here is a water quality emergency notification plan template that's available for water boards. So you can get a copy of this and fill it out. And then you'll be making sure that you're doing the right thing. Okay, so then the last two are the annual reporting of water supply condition information to State Board and the annual water demand reporting to State Board. So these are both reporting requirements that apply to all three categories of systems. We'll go to the next slide. So the quarterly reporting of water supply conditions, capacity, and production information to the State Board. So your reporting requirements is going to be an inventory and assessment of each of your water supply sources. So if you have more than one well, or you have a well and an intertie, you need to assess each of the water supply sources. And then you're also reporting the year's total water demand per month across your system, and both average and peak flow rate demand for each month and annually. The water demand and water supply quarterly reporting is to the State Water Board, and I'm hoping I can ask Joseph or one of your colleagues to come back on and talk a little bit about where that system sits at the moment as far as reporting goes.
Sure, and I think we have Eric Zuniga on the line that might be able to speak to this a little bit more. Eric, are you there?
I am here. Hey, everybody, and thanks for hopping on here. So yeah, we have a drought conservation reporting platform. We launched a year ago for a small subset of systems. So at this point in January, we have it for all systems that are community water systems and non-transient, non-community schools. As Mike is mentioning, for SB 552, those folks have requirements. But since the requirements are more than just for SB 552, we have folks that are monthly conservation reporting that are part of urban water suppliers, and we have other folks that submit data in terms of production and delivery data into our annual electronic report. Everybody by the end of the year will be expected to include this information into this portal. So if you don't have an account, most everybody has an account. I believe there were only about 280 water systems statewide, mostly small water systems. So maybe part of this group here that do not have an account. So if you don't have an account, please create an account. Our website is very simple. It's drought.waterboards.ca.gov, and that drought address will take you directly to the drought conservation reporting portal. We've done a number of workshops, brown bag trainings available on our website, and that information is available for everybody to try to get an account. We also have an email box where we help people with technical support if they have any issues logging in or filling out the report. And yeah, we do accept water shortage contingency plan information there. We do accept also source condition information, which is another part of SB 552, which is what is talked about here. And so you can see there's an inventory and assessment of each water supply source. So there's some basic information that we ask for each source as an inventory, like, hey, what maybe doesn't change from year to year, but there's also an assessment of how is your source actually doing. And even though we have an annual requirement here, there's some data points that don't make sense annually, and they make more sense on a quarterly basis. And so we've spaced those out so they make more sense in the types of data that we're collecting. And so more to come on this. We have an EAR input forum in November that's going to talk about some of these upcoming changes. But by the end of the year, we should be basically ready with all of the reporting requirements to satisfy this part of SB 552.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Just one piece of clarity from me. You said this January you got it open. Was it January of 2023 in the past, or January of 2024 that it'll be ready to go for everybody?
So January 2023, we started monthly time step reporting for this type of information. We have an annual report that we're working on right now that's going to encapsulate the monthly and put it into one giant annual report to really replace what folks had been used to reporting annually. So that will basically suffice with all of the remainder of the things required for SB 552 and put it all in one place. So folks have already been reporting. A lot of folks have been reporting their data already. They have until the end of the year to kind of get their year caught up, because their year will feed into, like, all their monthly reporting for the whole year will feed into their annual report for next year.
Thanks, Eric. That's really helpful. And I think we put a non-active link in the chat. Eric, could you just go there and make sure we have an active link in the chat to the site that you read to us?
Yeah,
about
sure
where
thing.
people should go? Yeah, thanks. Okay. That's really great news. So I hope people who aren't yet experienced with that portal can go to the link that Eric's about to share and get yourselves signed up. Look at some of the educational material there about how to use that reporting and get ready to do this piece too. That's great. Okay, next slide. So also in 552, there's a bunch of requirements for counties. And this is just an element that I know we have a bunch of county representation here across multiple departments, I think, from LA County. So the requirements in 552 is that the county establish a standing drought task force, and then to develop a county drought resiliency plan, particularly for residents that are served by state small water systems and domestic wells. There is a program from Department of Water Resources that's providing financial and technical assistance programs to help counties establishing these planning requirements in the task force. And then there is a guidebook about how to comply with this part of 552 that was developed with 12 counties working together to help that guidebook get established. So there's a number of tasks here on this slide that are relevant to the counties. And because this session is not necessarily focused on them, we're not going to go into it in great detail, but we did want to make it clear to everyone that the county does have a number of responsibilities called out by 552. Can we go to the next slide? So as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, one of the tools that was developed earlier in the work was the water shortage vulnerability tool set that Department of Water Resources established. They created an indicator set supported by a stakeholder advisory group a number of years ago now, and it created an understanding of water shortage vulnerability for small systems and then domestic well or self-supplied households. Again, this website has a link, so it offers a number of data and web-based tools that can help a small system know the way the state is thinking about your vulnerability and allow you to maybe see that the state's system or tools aren't properly judging your vulnerability, or maybe they found something that you hadn't thought of. And so either way, it's a great starting point for a system to start those conversations about technical assistance and state support, because you can use this as a way of imagining what the state thinks is true about you. Can we go to the next slide? So when we zoom in on LA County, you can see in the tool, these data points are the state's system understanding of risk. And you can see the blue dots are less risk and the high dots, the red dots are high risk. So you can link through the tool when we share the slides, and the tool link is also in the chat now as well. And so this is a good spot for everyone to start, again, to see what the state thinks is true about you, and then to start those conversations about what to do to overcome those vulnerabilities. I think the center point of 552 and the work that WaterTalks has been pursuing, and honestly to the voices of all the systems that we've talked to, is that there's an interest in making sure that no one is trying to solve these problems alone, that it's really a partnership between the state, the county, and the small system, and then the communities that are near each other but maybe aren't served by the same system. So that philosophy of mutual aid is really flowing at multiple levels in this program. So anyone walking away from this worried that you're vulnerable and not sure how to handle it, the point of this program is really to make sure that you don't feel like you have to handle it by yourself. Next slide. So when you look at this system, small water systems in schools, the state program analyzed 99 small water systems. These connections range from 1 connection to 2988. Most of them are under 1,000 connections. And the vulnerability scores range from no vulnerability at all, which seems peculiar to me, but okay, to a really high vulnerability of an 87 score out of 100. And when we reviewed the data for the LA County water systems, the key drivers of vulnerability is high temperature, which we know is one of the realities that LA County will be facing increasingly into the future. Wildfire risk, the impacts of drought, the influence of groundwater quality that may or may not be natural or pollution based, and then infrastructure or organizational vulnerabilities. So that means systems that are reliant on a single source or don't have their backup generators in place, no interties, or very old infrastructure. And there are some in our county that have very, very old pipes and other infrastructure that could be a risk, causing of risk. Next slide. So when we look at interties alone, this is an important data set, we think, is that interties can, as you saw earlier in the presentation, an intertie is a application of mutual aid so that if your well goes down, you don't lose all your water. And when you look at just this data set, 65 of the 99 systems that were analyzed don't have interties. And then only 21 have the emergency intertie. So it's just an emergency measure. Now, I know there's lots of reasons why interties are hard. Some of these systems are very geographically isolated, or you're in a mountainous area where it's not easy to tie together. But there are a number up in the Antelope Valley that actually are near each other, and interties might be a solution to consider there. Next slide. When we looked at just the metering, which, as you know, one of the later term requirements of the program is to include metering. So this is metering is a useful tool in managing demand and helping people understand how much water they're actually using, and making sure that you can set your fee structure such that people who use more water are accounting for how that demand influences everyone. So when we look at metering, the metering data alone, at least on my screen, it's hard to tell the difference between dark blue and dark red, but maybe that's just me. The dark red is that are dots of water systems that have reported that no one is metered, and the blue are reporting that everyone is, and the yellow is that only some customers are metered. So adding meters is another management strategy that's required by the measure. It's out a little ways, but it is another spot to think about moving forward if you don't currently have meters. Next. In the other organizational risk factors, there's questions of whether you have any drought planning. Only 17 of those reported, and only 17 of those analyzed in LA County reported having drought planning. And then rate structures is another element of organizational risk factors that was part of the assessment. And 32 systems reported having a flat base rate. And then 51 are suggesting that they updated their rates or have recently updated their rates, and a bunch of them quite a while ago haven't touched rates in a while. Next slide. So this is our last slide. It's a bunch more links. A bunch of these we were talking about along the way. The 552 primer is the guidebook that was talked about earlier. The water shortage vulnerability exploring tool has been linked in the chat, and you can go look at that. And then a bunch of recorded presentations are available that have been given by one or many of the state agencies that have been participating today. And then we have ways for you to contact both Department of Water Resources at the DRIP email address and State Water Board at the DGW drought email address. What do we have next, folks? I'm trying to remember the next slide, but I don't remember. Oh yeah, we're over into our agencies. So why don't we take 2 minutes for everybody to stand up and stretch? I know I do, or at least my watch says I should. So let's take 2 minutes to have a little stretch break, and then we'll come back and hear from all the agencies that are on the line. Okay, I had my stretch. Let's hope everybody else is back. So we're going to hear a little bit from the agencies that are involved in the program. We have the two lead agencies first that we're going to talk about first. So why don't I invite the DWR folks? Maybe I'll just say Julie, and then any of your teammates that are here as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about DWR and your approach and programs related to 552 and help share why people might think to reach out to you if they have questions?
Sure. Hi, I'm Julie Ekstrom from DWR. I would probably be more likely at this point to point to the water board for assistance for small water systems in regards to SB 552. They've developed a system for the new reporting tool, and also have posted a really helpful webinar that they did on the final template. So we worked very closely with the water board to develop the templates for the larger size small water systems, those with 1,000 to 2,999 connections, and non-transient, non-community water systems that are schools. Those have separate templates. And because that was required in SB 552 to co-develop those. And but since then, the water board has also created the template for and guidance for the emergency notification plan with the drought element, which is very helpful. And so I've been sharing that with small water systems as they ask for what that means in the law. And but really would want to point to my colleagues at the water board, because I mean, single messaging is definitely important, and to make it less confusing to the water systems.
So Julie, the role that DWR has played is mostly now in the past with the tools and resources that were developed earlier on. And now that it's into implementation, it's state board?
For the most part, I'd say, and Eric or Joseph are welcome to get on the line too.
They have the next slide, Julie. We'll go to them next.
DWR will continue to do the vulnerability tool and the vulnerability assessment for the water shortage drought vulnerability, which also we coordinate very closely with the water board in developing that, so that part of that can be used as in the safer programs needs assessment for their risk assessment that they do, that looks at quality, access, and affordability. And because water shortage vulnerability really feeds into the access question, that it's related to the human right to water. So we collaborate on that, and they share a lot of information with us so that we can develop that tool and update it. And we will continue doing that. We also do quite a bit. We have this program right now for counties that is helping them develop their SB 552 plans, which is different and sort of distinct in some respects from what the small water systems are, new requirements that they have to do. That we are seeing that some counties are choosing to incorporate the small water systems into their county plans. That's not required by law, but it is a good idea, when it's possible and when there is capacity and willingness and interest to do something like that, because of course water is all connected, and that a lot of small water systems on their own is not connecting. There's just value of connecting with your neighbors, relationship wise, and so we are working on that angle of helping counties get up and going with their responsibilities on domestic wells in the state small.
Great. Thanks, Julie. Is there anybody else from DWR here that we want to give an opportunity to chat, or is it just you today?
I think it's just me today.
Okay.
I could note that we have a drought training that has been done for the last at least 10 years that where small water suppliers, it's hosted by Cal Rural, and we had two last week, and we have two next week in Palm Desert and in Escondido, if anybody is interested in operators or managers. We even get board members coming, but the water operators and managers can get the credits for attending 4 credits, and it's free. But it's about drought and how it's like the physical aspects of drought. And then of course we do talk about SB 552, but it's a really good training on getting some better knowledge building around groundwater and wells. And we have groundwater geologist and well expert there. If anybody's interested, I can share that information.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to put a link to where people could discover that. And the organization you mentioned was Cal Rural Water Association,
Yeah.
which everybody refers to as Cal Rural. And I suspect most people on the line know about them, but I wanted to just say it all out in case. But yeah, if you could provide a link to that in the chat, Julie, that training or the right website where you could learn more about that training, that'd be great. Okay, let's go to the next slide, which is State Board. And I don't know, Joseph, do you want to go first? And then I know we've already heard from you and Eric a bit. So if you want to do an overview or bring any of your other colleagues online, go right ahead.
Oh, yeah, sure. I can go ahead and get started, and then I'll hand it off to Eric for a little bit after. But just to reiterate, my name is Joseph Guzman. I work for the State Water Board Division of Drinking Water. So I guess just more broadly, the State Water Board works with small water systems in quite a number of ways. First, and some of you might know this already, is as regulators of public water systems throughout the state of California. So that includes conducting permitting, inspection, compliance, monitoring, and enforcement activities with public water systems to make sure that they're providing safe drinking water to their customers. And then, of course, as Julie kind of brought up a little bit earlier, in collaboration with our Division of Financial Assistance and our Office of Public Participation and other partners throughout the state, we also implement our SAFER program, which my group is a part of, to collaborate on short and long-term solutions for water systems to make sure that they get access to safe drinking water. In some cases, the responsibility of regulating small water systems, that is small water systems under 200 service connections, is delegated to a county like it is here in Los Angeles County. So some of you might actually be regulated by the county and might not have dealt with us directly. But in these cases, it's actually my team's responsibility to provide oversight over the county drinking water program. So specifically for SB 552, we've touched on a lot of these different things throughout the presentation today. We do provide a lot of tools and support for small water suppliers to meet certain SB 552 requirements. So we talked a little bit at length about the drought reporting platform that's available through our SAFER Clearinghouse, where you can submit data that's related to water shortage, sources, supply and demand, and drought response. And of course, you heard from our drought response program manager, Eric Zuniga, earlier. And you probably recognize him if you've attended any of our drought and conservation reporting brown bag sessions earlier this year. And if you hadn't, there are actually some recordings and guidance on using that clearinghouse available on the drought and conservation reporting page that I believe he shared earlier, but I'll go ahead and drop it in the chat one more time, just so it's in the context of what we're talking about right now. So just give me 1 second. And this might result in a dead link, but I'll follow up after. But yeah, in addition to that, like Julie mentioned earlier, we also worked in collaboration with the Department of Water Resources and with small water systems throughout the state of California, especially over the course of the 2022 calendar year. We developed water shortage contingency plan templates. So through that process over the calendar year 2022, we developed templates that are available for small water suppliers with 1,000 to 2,999 service connections, as well as NTNCs that are schools. So those are 2 separate templates that kind of address the needs of each of the different types of water systems that are required to have a water shortage contingency plan. Those templates and some best practice examples are available on our drought and reporting page that I tried to share, and we'll share once I'm done talking. Yeah. And then again, we also developed an emergency notification plan template. That's the one that Julie referred to that she's been sharing with smaller water systems. And that includes the required drought elements that are required as of SB 552. If you do need a copy, I would definitely recommend to reach out to your regulator, because they're probably going to have it pre-filled with some of their contact information, because you'll want to be able to have the direct contacts to their office in case you have any water shortage emergencies. I think it'll be more useful to reach out to them so that you have that information pre-filled. And then lastly, like we touched upon a little bit earlier, I think during Mike's presentation, there's technical assistance available to systems that are under 1,000 service connections for SB 552 implementation. And a little bit outside of the scope for folks today, I think, but we also have assistance for counties to address the needs of state small water systems and domestic wells. And so I think all of that covers our role with small water systems specifically. Eric, I don't know if you want to chime in, add a little bit more, but if not, we can hand it off to our partners at the county.
Thanks, Joseph. And just wanted to add something that I think is on a lot of people's minds as far as, why do you have to worry about drought, especially in a year with record rainfall? And, what is this? This is an ongoing effort to manage water resources through the years, through dry years, through wet years. And a lot of times, when you understand what happens in wet years and you understand what happens in dry years, you have a good idea on planning and preparation for what's going to happen in the future. And so we've actually had this year, we've had 4 water systems that still failed due to drought, had a water outage, even during a wet year. And I think that just goes to show us, we can get confused sometimes, going to a drought portal or doing drought and conservation reporting, wonder like, why is this even applicable? And I think it just bears to say, a lot of the small water systems that are struggling to report this information, are struggling to get an extra source, are struggling to do these resiliency requirements. That is a struggle, and that's not going to happen just because we have a drought year. Doesn't mean that that's when all these things are important. These things are important to plan because it does take a year or 2 years or 3 years to develop some of the treatment plants and storage tanks and CEQA and wells in order to get this thing running. Because during an emergency, all the well drillers are busy and no one's going to be able to help, right? And these resources are here to bear for you guys to use that. And so that being said, we plan on putting a lot of visualizations together for folks that do not have technical experience to really be able to look at their data, to be able to look at how their wells are performing over the years and visualize, what is really happening in my source in a way that we've not really done before. A lot of this information is new for us. SB 552 kind of got us to the 21st century in terms of, we've never really assessed quality this way. As a field engineer for 15 years, I never went into a water system and just, measured their water level, even though we had a sounder, right, for emergencies, but we never measured levels. We never tabulated source capacities for systems in a meaningful way. And now we have the ability to do that, to really decide statewide who has a water outage. There's been a lot of counties that have had water outage systems for years, reliant on hauled water, which is not a good, sustainable, long-term source of supply. Anything can happen, traffic jam on the freeway, you lose your water source, and things like that. And so we're now aware of a lot of water outages and a lot of potential water outages because now we're seeing source capacities in this level for SB 552. So this data is super important. It's going to help a lot of folks. And even if it doesn't help you personally, let's say you're 100% good, your neighbor may not be. And your neighbor's source is very much influenced by your source. And your information could really help somebody else get the resources that they need. And this is going to help a lot of folks get resilient. So I just want to put a plug to that, we're not just doing data for data's sake. We're trying to put this data in the hands of people that can make meaningful decisions for it. I see a lot of my county representatives, people that I've spoken to, you guys are crucial to getting these smaller water systems, especially most of those that have not created accounts, are these small water systems they're not able to report. So I just wanted to add that.
I appreciate that, Eric. Reinforcing that this is an effort to make sure that everybody's in a good position and there's a lot of resources available to help that happen. That's really a nice reminder. I'm just watching the clock and I want to get through our county agencies, introducing themselves a little bit, and then make sure we have time for Q&A. So I know there's been some cues that went past us in the chat and we'll go back to them. But definitely if you have questions that you would like to ask any of the reps from the various agencies, we'd be glad to hear them here in a few minutes. But first, let me turn to the LA County Waterworks districts. And I think Danielle Bradbury is here to share a little bit about their role in all of this.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Mike. Just for a little bit of background, we're kind of in a bit of a unique position as well. We're both kind of the main audience, Mike, for this presentation, but also we're kind of out there actively trying to help others navigate these requirements as well. Some of the things you talked about, the drought resiliency measures, having that backup water supply. That's something where we have districts of all shapes and sizes, anywhere from like a couple handful of meters all the way up to like tens of thousands of meters. And so having that, just one extra backup water supply is something that we struggle with, and we're working both with our neighbors, and I see a couple of folks that we're kind of working with out there, different water agencies, or water districts, I should say. So it is something that's impacting us as well. The other item, I guess, is just for us as well as the county, just making sure we have backup generators and those sorts of things has been a challenge. The pandemic was a problem, but looking, I saw that a link was going through. I'm glad to see that the state has its own kind of program kind of aimed at those backup water generators, power generators. But anyways, maybe that's just a little bit about ourselves, and I guess I'll turn it back to you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. So the Waterworks Districts has multiple water systems that you manage, right? And some of them are captured by these new requirements. And you say you're already working with some of your neighbors, but if there's somebody on the line here that knows they're a neighbor of a Waterworks District and isn't yet talking to you about all this, that's something that you're eager to hear. You're eager to hear from them. Yes?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. If, I see two folks that have kind of approached us as the county that I'm on. That's something we are looking at. If your system is kind of like butted up right against ours, and it makes sense for us to kind of join together and help each other, that's something we would definitely be looking to help out with. So
great. Thanks, Daniel. It really seems like Waterworks Districts is the bridge here, in that it is connected to the county, which has a county role, but it also is connected to the small systems in a way that's really helpful. So that's great to hear. All right, let's go to the next slide. And I think Lee Alexanderson is going to come in and talk a little bit about how Public Works has a role in all of this. And I saw you also track down some mutual aid stuff that you put in the chat. So I don't know if you want to also voice that too, Lee. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess just in response to Mike's question earlier, there's mutual aid and then there's mutual assistance. So that's news to me because I'm not keen on the emergency response front. But I guess there's mutual aid. It's more of a statewide, less formal effort. There's no reimbursement of costs as a whole. But on the mutual assistance front, the county participates in a public works master agreement, it seems like. And I don't think it's necessarily public works for LA County in general. It's just public works agencies. So it's Orange County. I saw Beverly Hills on the list, Burbank. I saw the city of Needles way out on the eastern side of California. So it seems like it's a different way to just help smaller local agencies respond to maybe public works issues, whether it's water, mud flow. So at least we got a bit more info than we had before.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. That's really great. The fact that, I mean, all of us, or at least maybe I'm alone, I know that mutual aid is a thing in the fire service where different fire departments can help each other. It's exciting to learn that it's also something that public works departments are doing. And I think it's a fundamental piece of what 552 is encouraging is mutual aid amongst systems, but then also the support of counties and the state as everyone tries to solve these resiliency challenges related to drought. But go ahead, Lee. Why don't you tell a little bit more about where Public Works is playing a role in the 552 question?
Yeah, so at LA County Public Works, we have the LA County Water Plan, which is it's filling in the gaps of where there's some holes in water policies and procedures within LA County, and trying to build a coalition of our major key players, Metropolitan Water District, LADWP, and many other water agencies, to make sure that we're all aligned with policy when we speak with the state and with the federal government. And the water plan, it's the vision is pretty lofty. It articulates a shared, inclusive regional path forward to sustainably achieve safe, clean water resources for LA County. And as we were developing the plan, there were 4 key focal areas that rose to the top. The first was regional water supply reliability, groundwater management and water quality, And then the third one, which is the emerging one, was the small at-risk system resilience and drinking water equity. And then the fourth category was watershed land or watershed sediment management. But that third category is the one that the county sees that there's a opportunity for future work to be done with all the small water systems. And there's some targets within the county water plan. The first target is by 2045. We want to reduce at-risk systems by 100%. Another target is 100% of the water agencies in severely disadvantaged communities have affordable cost of water to meet health and safety needs. And we have two other targets, but again, this thought of the small at-risk water systems and seeing that there's a lot of opportunity to improve the reliability of water for the smaller folks throughout the county and for the agencies that aren't as well resourced and staffed as the big water agencies in the region. And I mean, I think the next steps with that, Mike and others, we're trying to figure out where do we go with this. It's one of those items that doesn't cleanly fit within the different agencies, but again, when we all put our minds together and work collaboratively, there's definitely opportunities to resolve some of those differences and make sure that those small agencies or the small residents in the different areas of the county have that reliable water.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. I know that Water Plan was out, had a public comment window. Is that now closed, or is it still something that's available for people to review?
Yeah, the public comment period closed last Monday.
Okay. And
all the comments.
And you think the next step of that water plan is what?
So in early December, we're hoping to go to the board for board adoption of the plan. That
Fantastic.
way it can be a guiding high-level document for the region as a whole.
That's great. All right. Thanks, Lee, for sharing that. I appreciate it. And let's turn to our last local partner is LA County Public Health. And I believe Andau is going to be presenting. Did I get that right?
Yes, I'm trying to turn on my video. Okay, so with public health, we are the State Water Board delegate the authority to us to enforce the regulation of the small water system of less than 200 connections. So so our role is just to permit the small water system of less than 200 connections. We do sanitary survey, like routine inspection and complaint investigation of these small water system. We're also reviewing their electronic annual report, their consumer confidence report and certificate. We're also reviewing their lab result, the water quality data, and we also issued boil water notice, the unsafe water notice. We also help with reviewing the technical, managerial, and financial documents, preparing any notice of violations, compliance order, and citations. We also help with the monitoring waiver and assisting small water system with any complying issues or any regulation by the state or federal regulations. So our role is similar to the State Water Board, but just in a smaller scale.
Thanks, Andau. I believe that's the last slide, and we have a Q&A session with about 15 minutes left in our call. And I guess I'm going to ask the first one, and I know Daniel from Waterworks had to drop off, but I'm hoping between Lee and Andau, does the county yet know which team is taking on the required task force for 552?
At this point, I think Lucy can chime in on that.
Okay, Lucy? Is Lucy still here?
Hi, yes.
Oh, there you are.
I
There you
was
go.
having issue.
No
I
problem.
won't be able to answer that question yet, but I'll provide as soon as we have a meeting with our management and Public Works.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Lucy. And I know to some extent there's a question from the chat which is relevant that Peter just asked is, so how does 552 impact individual well owners and systems below 15 connections? Are there any requirements or opportunities for support coming from the state or the county to help those people in those situations? Maybe I could start with State Board. What role do you have? It looks like Julie's adding some content to the chat, so I'll come to you next, Julie. But State Board folks, do you have anything that supports domestic well owners or very small systems below 15 connections? Joseph, or one of your team?
Sorry, had it on mute. So we'll be working with counties to implement implement their plans and task forces to address state small water systems and individual owners. So that, like, the actual direct interaction with domestic wells and state small water systems is going to still be with the counties. We don't really regulate state small water systems at DDW. But yeah, in addition to us working with counties here at the County Engagement Unit, we're also going to have, we have a countywide and regional funding program available through our Division of Financial Assistance. That's supposed to help counties implement their plans as well. And then Julie, she put in the chat, I'll actually hand it off to her to talk about what they have available to help with planning at the county level.
Yeah, Julie, just want to expand a little bit?
Sure. I just put a link in the chat that takes you to so we have an assistance program that is to help the counties develop their plans and put together their task forces if they haven't already done that. And because we know that that's a big lift, both of them are a huge lift. So that funding is available. There's a grant that's available. All counties are eligible. It's the deadline for it. It's rolling. So you can submit it anytime, and then the agreement will be in place, maybe in like a month or something after it starts, after that's submitted. And you can charge to that grant after the agreement is in place. That deadline to receive applications for that is December 29th this year. And then we have another program that, because we heard from many counties that they do not want to deal with another grant from the state for all like obvious reasons, or whatever their own preferences. And so we have a contractor on retainer that we are doing this. And we will talk to any county that is interested in either of these programs, so that we've been talking to them, where you sign up and then we ask you a bunch of questions about your needs. If you want task force help, if you just want the plan help, if you just need the drought risk assessment, whatever in process things you need, or technical, development of the plan. And so then we develop a scope for you, or our contractor does, and DWR participates in those discussions to make sure that that scope can meet your needs. And then the county reviews it, and then we get into an agreement, but there's no money that changes. There's no invoicing that the county has to participate in. We fund the contractor directly. And so both of those have the same economic value. They're both at $125,000 max. And so was the one called the direct technical assistance option, that it doesn't, that it stays within that scope. We also have, I'm just about to post it in a URL in the chat. It's called the Be Well, who Peter had asked about supporting individual well owners. And so we have an educational and outreach campaign that's designed specifically for domestic well owners that counties are encouraged to use and make use of. So there are materials and videos and all sorts of things in there about owning a domestic well and understanding groundwater, and giving them the information that can make them more knowledgeable in their well ownership. And that's called the Be Well Prepared campaign. And if counties are encouraged to use it, to make use of it, and if
Seems like maybe
that you think would be more useful to be part of it. Oh, did my internet go out? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you stalled for a second there, Julie.
Okay.
But you were telling us about the Be Well Prepared, which is just an awesome name for this program. So kudos to whoever came up with that. But yeah, sharing that link would be really helpful. I think in the end, though, what we're hearing is that both State Board and DWR have strategies to support counties, and it's really the county that's going to be in support of state smalls, so 15 or less, and then individual well owners.
Yeah, at least have a
Yep.
plan that it's clear of what the expectations of everyone is. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Do we have any other questions? Rihanna, have you been tracking any other questions that didn't get answered in the chat? I saw a bunch of Q&A was happening over there during the presentation.
I think that there aren't any new questions and that we've covered the earlier ones.
Okay. Well, with about 7 minutes left, does anybody want to raise their hand and take advantage of all of the people here that might be able to answer your question? It's okay if not. Peter, do you have any other questions you've heard out there being a watershed coordinator that might want to get voiced?
No, nothing that comes to mind, but I do want to reiterate, we will, with this recording available and the slides, we'll be sending out follow-up information for everybody here today, as well as those who are not able to join us today.
Yeah, and Peter and Amanda, do you think tree people will also be able to communicate with everyone when LA County does initiate that task force effort, whether it's from Public Works or Public Health or somewhere else?
I should think so. Tree People serves as watershed coordinator for the region, Upper Santa Clara River region, as part of LA County's Safe Clean Water program, and so that would certainly fall within our purview to keep folks connected and aware and apprised of these programs as they come up.
Yeah, that's great, Peter. Thank you. So, I mean, the county team, as that task force comes into shape, definitely make sure Tree People is part of the way you communicate out about it. I do see a question in chat, I think probably for you, Julie, about, oh, and you answered faster than I could
But you
call
want
on
me
you.
to
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So if Kevin is asking about the direct technical assistance option, that's where we have the contractor on retainer. It's very quick to sign up for it, though usually our staff at DWR talks to the county first just to make sure you understand your options. And then, that could be quick. That could be a 15-minute call. And then, and when a county has decided that, yes, they want to do that option, then it's a really fast form, multiple choice with just the contact information. And then that triggers to do an intake call that is with DWR and our contractor group. And so then we talk to the county, like the point of contact for this, but also maybe a few other people. Sometimes they bring in their emergency services, the environmental health people, like whoever's kind of key into this discussion. And then so that we can we ask all sorts of questions to try to get an idea of how we can work with you to help you develop this plan or put, whatever you need for the task force. And so that it is like personalized to the county. And then from there, we all agree with that agreement, and the county checks it and revises it. So that could be a little bit, but we want to make sure it fits for you. And then we go into, then there's a kickoff meeting. And then it's a 12-month period when that contractor works with you to develop the plan. And so at the end of it, the goal is to have a plan.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. If they if the question was to opting for the financial resources instead of technical assistance, does the process start the same, that they should just call and have a quick call with you to understand what the whole process is? And what can you share about that part?
Yeah, and they're welcome to call us and to just so they make the best use out of it. We've reviewed other some counties, their grant proposals. I mean, they're supposed to be brief. This is a sub-program built as a sub-program of the Small Community Drought Relief Program that DWR had during the last 2-year drought. And so it's pretty straightforward of how to develop that proposal, but we can help. And then we believe it's pretty quick to turn around before that can begin.
Okay.
yeah, happy to walk you through that, Kevin,
Yeah.
if you want.
Was that the
Thank you,
question?
Julie.
Was that the answer you'd hoped for, Kevin?
Yeah, just, as the rollout occurs for the county and putting together the task force amongst the departments, we want to at least have that information readily handy and know who we can contact directly in regards to more information to get that process started. So that's good that you're able to provide us some of that detail as things are still unfolding within the county as a whole.
I'm gonna put the email addresses here if you want to contact us.
Okay, no, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Julie.
All day long,
Thanks,
we talk to
Kevin.
counties about this. So, yeah, we want to help your county get up and going and make sure that you get if you do want the grant option, that you get the chance to apply for it before that deadline hits, because I'm not sure how to change that deadline.
So I'm assuming that financial assistance is applicable just as one particular county as a whole, not individually based on departments, correct?
That's correct. So
Okay.
each county, the county is expected to have one plan. Well, I don't know if you've seen, was clear in the law that you're allowed to have, you can make it a standalone plan for your SB 552 plan. This is for domestic wells and state smalls, or you can weave it into your existing or new plans. Most what we are finding and hearing from counties is this standalone plan, and then they will take pieces of it and weave it into their local hazard mitigation plan or their general plan in the future, but just to have a place where it's standalone. But you're welcome to do either, and so there needs to be a task force or some committee that already existed that is in charge of that plan, and we need a point. So not every program in your county is going to have its own SB 552 plan. There should be one, but yes,
Yeah, that'll be general.
So I'm looking at the clock, and I'm really appreciative of all of the state and county agencies that joined us today. This is the time that we'd set aside for this. The slide deck and I think the really great resources of the chat will be made available via Tree People in the next couple of days as we gather them all and make it shareable. And we really appreciate everybody being here. And with that, the session is complete. Peter, do you want to say goodbye as our WaterTalks lead?
Yes, I want to say thank you to everybody who's involved today, not only our agencies, but especially our water systems who are joining in today. Thanks everybody for being here.
Okay, bye-bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye all, thanks so much.